The Concert of Europe was an exclusive club. After the Napoleonic Wars, monarchs of Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Britain agreed to maintain the status quo: no new empires and no border changes without collective approval. The rules were strict. If a region broke away, the great powers stepped in to lock the borders. This held until the Ottoman Empire weakened. In 1853, Russia invaded Moldavia and Wallachia, seeking control of the straits between the Black Sea and Mediterranean. This territorial dispute over the Balkans became the catalyst for the system's failure. It forced the great powers to choose sides, ending the decades of cooperation that had followed the Napoleonic Wars. To stop Russian expansion, Great Britain and France teamed up with the Ottomans. For Britain, it was about protecting Asian trade routes. For France, it was a chance to demonstrate military strength on the world stage. The Crimean War was a logistical disaster. After heavy losses, Russia was forced to seek peace in 1856, signing a treaty that placed its conquered Balkan territories under the protection of all the great powers. The war turned old allies into enemies. Austria had its own interests in the Balkans and refused to support Russia during the fighting. This left Russia humiliated and Austria completely friendless among the great powers. The Concert of Europe was over. Without these alliances to enforce the old rules, the door was open for aggressive new empires and internal rebellions. Across the continent, established empires faced a choice: adjust to the demands of the middle and lower classes, or risk total collapse. Great Britain avoided revolution through compromise. Parliament expanded voting rights to the industrial middle class and passed the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833. As machines became more efficient than human labor, the British shifted their economic model away from slavery while maintaining trade growth. Queen Victoria became the symbol of this stability. Her sense of duty and moral respectability defined the values of an era that saw Britain become the world's leading industrial power. In France, Napoleon III took a different route. He controlled the military and police directly, but distracted the public from their lack of political freedom by modernizing Paris. He replaced narrow streets with broad boulevards, public squares, and underground sewage systems. Russia's reforms were less successful. Tsar Alexander II freed the serfs in 1861, but the peasants were left with poor land they couldn't afford. The resulting social unrest eventually led to the Tsar's assassination by radicals. Across the Atlantic, the United States was nearly destroyed by its own internal divisions. The struggle over the Southern cotton economy and the North's abolitionist movement resulted in a civil war that claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. While these nations focused on their own internal fractures, they failed to notice the radical changes brewing in the center of Europe. The first major move to redraw the map happened on the Italian peninsula. Nationalists saw the breakdown of the great power alliances as their chance to unify. In the north, Prime Minister Camillo de Cavour used economic growth to build a large army. He made a sneaky alliance with France to provoke the Austrians into a war, successfully pushing them out of northern Italy. In the south, Giuseppe Garibaldi led a volunteer army of 1,000 patriots. They swept through Sicily and Naples, conquering the southern half of the peninsula from the bottom up. Garibaldi chose to turn his conquests over to the north. On March 17, 1861, a new state of Italy was proclaimed under King Victor Emmanuel II. The proclamation of a unified Italy meant the old 1815 map was no longer the reality. Borders that once seemed fixed were now as fluid as the alliances that supported them. To achieve German unification, nationalists looked to Prussia. Its prime minister, Otto von Bismarck, was a practitioner of realpolitik, a strategy based on practical power rather than ethics. Realpolitik meant focusing on military reality. Bismarck ignored his own parliament's refusal to raise taxes, instead collecting the money illegally to build a massive, highly disciplined army. From 1862 to 1866, Bismarck governed without legislative approval. He focused entirely on an active foreign policy that relied on military force to achieve Prussian goals. Bismarck intentionally provoked 3 wars against Denmark, Austria, and France. These victories terrified the smaller, independent German states into joining a Prussian-led alliance for protection. Bismarck had proven that calculated militarism was the most effective tool for building a modern empire. In 1871, the Prussians finalized their victory over France. They chose to humiliate the French by holding a coronation in the Palace of Versailles, just 12 miles outside of Paris. Surrounded by hundreds of Prussian nobles and generals, King William I was officially proclaimed Kaiser of the new Second German Empire. The fragmented map of Central Europe had been replaced by a single, unified German powerhouse dominating the center of the continent. Germany was now the supreme industrial and military power in Europe, replacing the old balance of power with a new center of gravity. The era of king-led cooperation was over. In its place stood a continent defined by competing nationalisms and an arms race that would drive the events of the 20th century.